Why would you pick up your entire life and move to a state that you have never been to? So that's my story. I realized I never really shared about why we made the decision to move here to Texas. So wanted just to kind of unpack that a little bit. So if you're someone that's thinking about relocating to the state, no matter where you are, maybe you're in California like we were, or you're in any other state, it's a big decision. And so you want to make sure that you're taking into account all the things that are important to you as to why you would leave your home state. So our story is born and raised, both my husband and I, born and raised in Southern California. So Altadena, I'm originally from the high desert, so Lancaster, Palmdale area. And so when I left high school, the way for me to get out into the big city was to go to college. So I wound up going to college in the Los Angeles area, actually specifically in the Long Beach area, went to Long Beach State and Go Beach, and stayed in that area. So stayed in the Bellflower, Lakewood, Long Beach, ultimately North Orange County. So lived in Anaheim for a period of time, lived in Cypress for a period of time. That was actually the last city that we lived in before we left. And so I've been there, and honestly, I was kind of one of those people that were like, I'm never leaving California. I'm born here. I've been raised here. I'm going to die here. This is my state. And even when I met my husband, he was like, "Oh, where do you see yourself settling down?" I'm like, I'm in it. I'm never leaving. This is if you're going to be with me, you're going to stay here in California." Um, Fast forward over time after we got married and we had our son, I kind of was just like, this is not the same environment I feel like I grew up in. So even though I grew up in California, it was a smaller town. Everybody knew each other. My dad had a hardware store in the city, and so everybody knew us. And so what I wanted for my son was to be able to have that kind of small town where people know you and that community. And I felt like where we were, that really wasn't happening. Not only that, but I was spending an hour and a half, typically about an hour and a half each way to get to work and then come home. So by the time I came home, at the time our son was very young. And so I'm exhausted. I see him for maybe an hour. He eats, he goes down, and then that's it. And so our family life was basically being relegated to just the weekend. And even by the weekend, we were exhausted. And so it really wasn't a life. And we were always hearing, oh, well, you can go to the beach, you can go to the mountains, you can all in one day. Technically, you can, but in practicality, by the time you spend all the time in traffic, you're not really. Are you really going to go do those things? And for us, we were just so tired that it really was it wasn't anything that we were interested in doing, right? I remember even before we left California, so when we made the decision to leave, when we left, I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the beach. I never went to the beach. We were like technically 20 minutes from the beach being in Cyprus, and I never went. But I'm like, I'm going to go because it's going to be harder to get to the beach once we move. I will tell you all that I went to the beach technically, and was probably maybe, I don't know, 100, maybe 200 feet from the sand and couldn't see the water. Why? Because there were so many people there that I literally, all I can see is umbrellas and people. I'm like, this is not the experience. I told a friend of mine that, and she's like, you probably went to the wrong beach. Probably true. But the fact that it's just so, for us at least, it was just so populated that it's like all these amenities that we're paying for, good weather, beaches, ocean, mountains, all of that. We weren't using it. So I'm finding that we're spending our salaries on high rents, high just overall cost of living, food, gas, all the taxes, all of that. And I'm like, but we really pause because you can get in this cycle of you're just living life. So you're just doing things and not really thinking about it. And then we kind of pause and say, well, what are we doing? Is this the lifestyle that we want to live? And so we realized that this is not quite it. And California wasn't going to change, right? Like the cost of living wasn't going down. This is what it was going to be. So we had to make the decision, is this going to be enough for us? And for us, we had decided we're going to, this could be it. Maybe this is going to be where we're going to stay, but at least let's explore some other opportunities. And so at that time, we had family that had moved, had other family members here in Texas, and they had moved. And so we said, you know what, let's check it out. The reason why Texas was because Texas was close enough to California. It's about a 3 hour flight. I think coming out here is like 2 hours and 40 minutes. Going back is like right at 3 hours. So super quick flight. We potentially would have family living in the state. Um, and it was very military friendly, very veteran friendly. And my husband's a veteran. And so he wanted to be in a space that would allow for him to really um, honestly get the honor that he's due as a veteran. So we looked at Texas for those reasons. And when we came here, we just kind of drove around, just wanted to get the vibe of what this North Dallas area was like. And we couldn't believe what the houses were like, and the neighborhoods, and how friendly people were, and how much our money would stretch here in Texas. And we're going, we can actually these types of houses that we were seeing. If you picked that house up and moved it to California, that house would have been $3 million. Whereas here at that time, we came originally in 2017. At that time, that house was around 300,000. So we were like, okay, this is insane. And so while I realize it's not just about the house, it's about your whole lifestyle. But what I noticed about how we felt, I felt more calm here. I felt like at peace. I can't explain it other than to say it was just I don't know, a settling of my spirit when we got here. And so I took note of that when we were here, because again, when we first came, it was just a discovery trip to see if we liked the area. But that was something that I noticed. And I did notice that when we were in Cyprus, when I would go to the store, run errands, just regular things, I had this level of anxiety. Like I wasn't feeling comfortable anymore. And that was weird for me because I'm born and raised in Southern California. This is my home. Like this is what I know. But I started to feel very uncomfortable there. And then when we came here, that feeling went away. That was settled for me. So that was another thing. And so as we were traveling back and kind of deciding, we were like scale 1 to 10, would you move tomorrow? Or, it would be a 10, or one is absolutely never. We were probably about an 8 when we left to move back to go fly back to California. And so from that point on, we kind of made the plans of like, okay, how are we going to do this? Because we don't know how we're going to do this at the time. And so we prayed on it. And so doors opened for us to where we were able, shortly after that's not true. 2017 is when we came to visit. It wasn't until 2018, early 2019, actually, it's 2 years later, that the opportunities doors started open for us to where we were able to actually leave California and move. And so things weren't perfectly lined up when we moved, but we just kind of stepped out in faith and said, we have a part of the opportunity, but we have some of the resources that we need. We don't have all of them, but we're going to go ahead and step out there and make that move. And we did. And I will tell you, I do not regret it. When we got here, a number of doors opened up for us to where we were able to get settled and my husband was able to get the job because he had to just leave his job. He wasn't able to transfer or anything, but he was able to secure another position at that time. And so everything just kind of landed and was in the right place. And so, of course, as we were thinking about doing this, it was a concern for us. We're like, we don't know the full story, but we do know that it feels like this chapter that we're currently in is closing. One of the other concerns I had was like tornadoes. Like, okay, I know how to do earthquakes like that. I was like, I got that. But tornadoes, I'm not so sure about that. But honestly, again, we have been here now for 4 years as of the recording of this video. And we've had tornado warnings. We've had tornado watches. So it's important to know the difference between the two. Maybe I'll do another video about what those differences are if that's a concern for you and moving to Texas. But it's really been that big of a deal. And the one thing about the warning, at least, is that you do get a warning. It's not with the earthquake, it's just you're in it, that is happening. But they do a really good job of just kind of keeping you abreast of exactly where it is and where they're seeing things. And so there's ways to take precautions. But that was absolutely one of the things that I was a little bit concerned about. But now it kind of feels like earthquakes to me back when we were in California, where it's not that you need to be aware, you need to stay weather aware. That's something that I did not have to do in California. You do kind of have to watch the weather because the weather here in Texas swings dramatically. So you have to kind of know what's up, but that wasn't really a huge concern. The other concern that we have is just kind of talking a little bit about concerns now is, we saw the homes and things like that, but overall quality of life. Are we going to be homesick? Are we going to miss our family? And I will say that, like, absolutely, we miss family and friends that are still in California. But now, when they come to visit, we actually have space for them to actually stay with us, right? They don't have to go stay at a hotel because we have plenty of space for them to stay with us and really be able to spend quality time together. Because when we were living next to each other, they're working, we're working, we hardly saw them anyway. Whereas now, when they come to visit, it's more, what I'll call like slower time, where we're able to spend like a good amount of quality time together. And even truly, like some of the people that have come to visit us are like, whoa, this is actually really nice. I don't know what do people think, like you come to Texas and everybody's in cowboy boots and I don't know, cowboy hats and riding horses. That is not the case. And so, well, and it is, and some people they are, but that's not the entire state. And so when people have come to visit us, we've even, like, we call it recruiting. We've even have a few people that were interested in kind of looking at houses just for their own curiosity to see, like, okay, what would this be like, just to explore options. And so that's been a great blessing to us to be able to have the space, have the opportunity to be able to share with other folks that might be interested in changing it up a little bit. California is wonderful, and I would never bash California because it's where I met my husband. It's where I grew up. It's just that at this stage of life, in this season of life, we just wanted something different. And so we wanted to be close enough to where we could travel back and forth. But in terms of living and having our day-to-day lives and raising our family, we had just decided to make a different decision. And I believe that it's the right decision because as somebody who has never lived in another state, I thought I might be homesick. I'm not. I was concerned about, like, how do we create community here? The one thing that I would say that has been really a blessing for us is we've been able to create community here because there's so many transplants, not just from California, but multiple other states where they're also looking for community. They're also looking to get involved and make friends. Because a lot of times as an adult, you're like, I don't even know how to make friends anymore. I've grown up with these people that I know here in my home state, and now I'm going to pick up and move my whole family. How do I do this? And because you're coming to a space where there's a lot of people that are experiencing that same thing, I feel like people are more open to making friends or going out and meeting people and creating those relationships. And so that was something that was a little bit of a surprise. It was a concern, but a little bit of surprise. I think if you put yourself out there are people that are absolutely wanting to make community. We have in our neighborhood some of the best neighbors who have get-togethers and things like that, and they're very, very welcoming. And I didn't really, even though we grew up in California, I didn't really find that as much because people are just so busy working and just surviving. I didn't want to survive anymore. I wanted to feel like I could thrive, and I wanted to feel like our family could thrive. And I definitely feel like that here in Texas. The other thing is the schools here are amazing. Like, the things that my son is learning as a 7-year-old is like mind-boggling, things that he has access to. And so his growing up experience is going to be way different from mine. And so there is some balance there and wanting to make sure that he's doesn't turn into a brat. But I have to say, like, they are some of the access that he has to the academics and the types of involvement that not only the teachers but the parents and the community have in the schools is really something I hadn't seen when we were in California. So not to say it doesn't exist. I just didn't, where we were, I'll say it that way, I didn't see it. And so those are some of the big reasons that we decided to make the move. When we were preparing to move, I did shoot a video. I'm kind of glad that I did. It's like, wow, like it's kind of fun to look back on kind of where your thought process was and to see that. So I'm going to include that piece of that video and a few of the photos that we took as we were getting ready to leave, um, just to kind of help encourage some folks. If you're watching this video probably because you're thinking about relocating here to Texas and you're wanting to collect that information from people that have done it, to see if there's regrets and pros and cons. And of course, everybody's situation is different. But what I would say is to maybe make a list. This is not going to be revelation knowledge to anybody, but make a list of those pros and cons. Like, why are you thinking about relocating? And what are you hoping? What is this? What is the outcome that you're hoping to achieve? So make a list of the pros and cons. Um, and then if you're a person of faith, then I would absolutely encourage you to pray about it. And then just wait and see. For us, when we did that, we started noticing that these opportunities started to arise that came out, honestly, felt like they came out of nowhere. Um, and so that was our sign that, like, okay, we've been released, we've been given the go ahead to go ahead and make the move. So if you're not a person of faith, and then I would say take some time, still wait, still ponder a little bit about it. Come visit the area like we did, and see. As somebody in the North Dallas area, I can definitely point you into, here's a list of places to go check out, just to get a sense of what it's like, not just the houses. That's an important piece, but that's not the whole thing. You want to look at the entire community. So where should you go visit, things like that, different cities and how they compare based on what maybe if you're coming from California, at least what you're used to. That's another thing that I would suggest doing. And then just consider, right? Every person's experience is going to be different with this. And so doing what you're doing in terms of going on YouTube, finding videos, trying to get a sense of what it's like, that is critical. But until you get boots on the ground, you won't really know. So if you're in a position to where you can come and do a visit first to check it out, to see if you like it, I'd highly suggest doing it. So hopefully this has been helpful. I'm just kind of rambling on, but I thought it might make sense to put some information out about why we made that move. Again, I don't regret it at all. If anything, I wish we could have done it sooner. A lot of people say that. And now I'm one of those people that I used to watch that said that. But we have absolutely enjoyed our experience here living in Texas. We've built community that I think might not have been the same if had we had stayed. And so it was a risk that we took, but it was it was calculated risk, and it's one that I'm so glad that we made. So hopefully this will be helpful. In the next part of this video, you'll see kind of my little. This was, I think, 3 days before we moved, and so you'll see the boxes and everything stacked up. And actually, convinced my parents to come over. We flew over and then shipped our cars. And so I convinced my parents to come, and that was calculated because my goal was actually to try to get them to move. So again, like I just said, boots on the ground, sometimes you need to see it. They were not interested in moving whatsoever. They're like, good for you guys. Great, we'll come visit. But then the pandemic hit and some things changed and they weren't able to visit. So that changed their perspective a little bit. So we did have them come with us to help us get settled, and it gave them an opportunity to kind of check it out and see, and just kind of planting some seeds there. So ultimately, I will say they did move. It was 2 years later, they did move here. So if you're concerned about family, make it a family decision. Maybe you all take a trip together here to the North Dallas area. So anyway, again, hopefully this is helpful for you all. If you have any questions, please feel free to put something in the comments and reach out. Happy to give some additional insight if there's other things that you would like to see covered or that I didn't touch on. Just hoping to be a resource for anybody that's watching this video. So thank you so much. Stay tuned for the next part where you'll see our exodus here to Texas. See you in the next video.